France is due to vote in snap elections at the end of the month, and polls show the opposition far-right National Rally could come out on top. Surveys also show that their message is resonating among young voters. In recent European elections, the far-right took in nearly 30% of the youth vote nationally. DW correspondent Sonia Phalnikar joined some of the party's youth wing southwest of Paris to see what's driving their rise.
Les élections, on va faire comme d'habitude, donc on va faire le tour de Troyes, on va monter après au niveau de la MD.
Gearing up for snap elections in France. These activists are with the far-right National Rally. Today they're in Troyes, a city in the rural east where the party won by a huge margin in recent European elections. Across the country, a lot of their support comes from younger voters. The head of the youth wing, Vincent Lefebvre, thinks he knows why they're striking a chord in his region.
There are fewer buses to go to school. There are fewer shops close by, fewer bakeries. Everything is increasingly centralised. People are forced to use their cars. Prices of fuel and electricity have gone up, especially for students.
The activists explain why they decided to support the far right.
Earlier, I was with the Green Party. But with the Green Party, there's a lot of greenwashing. I'm drawn more to the National Rally. They speak the truth. They don't make false promises.
Amongst all the parties, it's the National Rally that comes closest to ensuring my security. For example, when I go out and if I'm followed on the street. It's sad to say, but it's always by a certain kind of person. Sometimes they can be French, but often they are not. It's really about uncontrolled immigration.
Such issues form the backbone of the National Rally's platform. The party's popular 28-year-old president, Jordan Bardella, is the one turning them into hot topics on social media. He's largely credited with mobilizing the youth vote with his snappy videos. The far-right's messaging has found fertile ground elsewhere in the rural region, the town of Romilly-sur-Seine. The far-right dominated here as well in the recent European elections, taking nearly 50% of the vote. The town has seen better times. Since the 1980s, the closure of textile factories has led to an estimated 25,000 job losses in the region. Critics say the failure by other political parties to connect with voters has contributed to the rise of the far right.
We are concerned, but we're not really surprised. Here we barely have public services, few jobs, dwindling wages, and a poverty rate of 24%. In recent years, we've seen a strong migration of people of North African and Sub-Saharan origin from the Paris region. They don't find a lot of jobs, and the National Rally here, on a local level, as usual, has profited from stigmatizing the other.
But the union has found a way of fighting back by fact-checking the National Rally. They've shown how local far-right MPs have often voted in Parliament against measures they claim to support, such as raising the minimum wage or increasing aid for students and for social housing. Back in Troyes, the far-right activists have discovered some posters they've just put up have already been vandalized. Vincent admits it happens a lot.
That's because of the way we're portrayed by the media and by the left. People still have this image of the National Rally as racist and Nazi. It's the party's history, that's why.
Despite this image, the party is gaining momentum, not just here, but all over France, and is making progress in its efforts to convince voters it's just a normal political party, despite its radical agenda.
DW correspondent Sonia Phalnikar filed that report for us and joins me now for more. Sonia, you followed these youth activists in Troyes for your report. What did you experience during your reporting?
Well, Barish, I actually found it incredibly difficult to interview ordinary young people about voting for the far right. As you pointed out, these were activists of the party. But getting, kind of ordinary voters to talk openly about voting for the far right still is a bit of a taboo, I would say, at least speaking openly about it on camera. What was easier for me was speaking to older voters in these towns where I was. And they were, eager to speak about their support for the far right. Unfortunately, there I had to on 2 occasions, listened to comments like, oh, but you're not really French, I don't want to talk to you. Or I was asked by one older person whether it was mixed race, what I was doing there. Of course, these are isolated incidents. Most of the people I spoke to were perfectly nice. But I think it goes to show that this rising immigration to rural France and to provincial towns has led the far right, as the Labour Union told me, to kind of amplify incidents of crime and violence. That has in turn stoked kind of anti-immigrant sentiment in these areas. I heard from some older people who told me they felt their town had really changed because of the migrants. It didn't feel French anymore. It felt unsafe to go out at night.
Young people particularly have traditionally voted for the left of the political spectrum, but now they are increasingly drawn to the right. What's prompted that change?
Well, I think for a lot of young people, especially in these kind of provincial towns and rural regions, I think the reason they're voting for the far right is the same as older voters. I think namely a kind of erosion of public services, things like hospitals, a lack of public transport, which means people have to rely on their cars. And that's where the far right, seems to be striking a chord with its campaigns on, kind of pushing down gas prices, cost of living. But I think one other big factor for young people is the presence of Jordan Bardella, the 28-year-old telegenic president of the National Rally. He's a political protege of Marine Le Pen, and I think he really kind of embodies this attempt by Marine Le Pen to detoxify the party and move it away from some of its more radical positions. And Bardella, of course, is huge on social media. He's got over 1 million followers on TikTok. A lot of young people see him as, media savvy and dynamic. And he has an interesting backstory. He grew up in a tough suburb of Paris. He is the son of Italian immigrants. He dropped out of school. He joined the National Rally at 16. He kind of presents himself as a candidate who loves France and the French. He's, rooting for French farmers, promising to impose more restrictive immigration policies. And I think all this seems to be resonating with young voters in France.
In recent days, Sonia, the alleged rape of a 12-year-old Jewish girl has shocked France. Is this incident going to impact the elections?
Well, it's certainly kind of stoked, I would say, further tensions on what is already a divisive campaign. It's been talked about a lot. It's been condemned. This incident has been condemned by lawmakers on the campaign trail. There was a demonstration in Paris last night against anti-Semitism. And of course, the backdrop to this is that there have been an increase in a rise in incidents of anti-Semitic abuse and violence in France since the October 7th attacks in Israel. France, of course, is home to the largest Jewish community in Europe. And of course, the political context to this is that the far-right National Rally, led by Marine Le Pen, the founder of this party was anti-Semitic. He was convicted of denying the Holocaust. This party has changed its position and has, come out in strong support of Jews and the state of Israel in the wake of these October 7th attacks. Meanwhile, on the left, you have a far-left party whose leader, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, has been staunchly pro-Palestinian. He's been accused of making some anti-Semitic comments in recent months. So I think French Jewish voters are kind of confronted with some agonizing choices here between the far right and the left alliance. Both these are probably going to be the biggest forces in parliament after these elections. And this has really been discussed a lot right now in France.
Sonia Phalnikar in Paris. Thanks very much for that.